This is a Book Potato interview. Today we are here with Joyce Hampton. Joyce, hello.
Hello.
Right, Joyce has kindly come into the shop and just earlier given a talk on her book. This is The Story of the Huguenots, A Unique Legacy. Now, am I pronouncing the name correctly?
Huguenots.
It's Huguenots. Again, not Huguenots, Huguenots.
A lot of people get it wrong.
They do, yeah. Tell us about, the book, but before we get on to the book, why this particular book? What's the story with the Huguenots? If anyone doesn't know who they are.
Huguenots were French Protestants. John Calvin, who was born in northern France, introduced Protestantism to France, which was a very Catholic country at that time, as most of Europe was. And the story tells how they converted to being Protestants, Huguenots, and their struggles to maintain their daily lives and to practice their faith. It's not quite as dire as I've now made it sound. There are lots of bits of hope in there as well, nuggets of how people helped each other. But then eventually they had to flee to other shores. Predominantly these were people that were very skilled in lots of different crafts, and so they were welcomed in other countries. Our King James I was very pleased to see them all come over. Oh yes, yes, teach the locals, who would be more than happy.
Right.
And they did make an immense difference financially to this country. We grew in wealth because of them. They're not just the dry, dusty, in the past group of people. They have made a difference to our daily lives even now. The banknotes that we handle, they were created from or by Huguenots. Even the watermark, that was developed and included because of Huguenots. The Bank of England was formed because of Huguenots. The daily official list of stockbrokers that's still in use and is the third oldest daily newspaper was a Huguenot. They were involved in glasses, John Dolland, Donna Aitchison, medicine, founding hospitals, as well as, of course, silk weaving. They were also silversmiths, felters, dyers. 1/6 of the population can trace a member of their family to being Huguenots.
Wow.
And that's how I started, because when I was a child, like most children, well, where did we come from, Dad? And my father said, well, we were Huguenots. What's a Huguenot, I asked. Oh, French Protestants. And I thought, I'll have to find out more about this later. When I was doing my previous book, I kept finding bits out, and I thought, I need to now find out more and see what else to find.
Because it's definitely, it seems just from a layman's point of view, someone who's not researched this, some things are just in popular culture, the name, even if you don't know what it's reflecting or what about, you've heard the name. But this name, this word, this group isn't something that I've stumbled over before. You know, it's not been sort of a TV series, it's not been in contemporary kind of culture, I suppose. Unless you research it.
No, that's right. And unless you've got a passion for it. There are certain parts in London, for example, Spitalfields is very much a Huguenot enclave. There's the museum at Rochester, which is the Huguenot Museum. And Canterbury, of course, is also very much home to the Huguenots. But unless you have that connection, unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be taught in schools. I would like to get it into schools. I would love to go and talk to children about this history, because even if you haven't got French Protestant ancestry, what the Huguenots did for us has made a huge difference to our daily lives, and still does.
Sure.
They should be remembered. They should be right up there.
Why do you think they have been forgotten or ignored?
I think it's a bit like anything else in history. Something else comes along and grabs people's attention. Occasionally they're mentioned. I mean, during the crisis of before the vote for Brexit, it was mentioned in Parliament, well, you know, we accepted the Huguenots. So you get this occasional mention, but you don't get a full-on, you know, why they were so important. And even the word refugee is a French word, and until the Huguenots came in, people coming to these shores were not called refugees. It was when Huguenots came that they first became known as refugees.
Okay, again, because it's a French word.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting to note just how tied this country is to France in a way, from a history point of view.
Oh yes.
I mean, everyone knows obviously 1066 and
Yep.
William the Conqueror, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, not necessarily anything after that.
No, and that's a shame. It really is a shame because, again, it's a very important part of our history, of our heritage.
Sure.
And it needs to be passed on to the next generation and the next. It does need to be brought out.
Sure. So, when did they first? What year are we talking about when they first started coming in? And again, I guess how long did it take for them to come? Because obviously it wasn't just a couple of weeks. I guess these things happen for a long period of time.
Yes, it was a long time, and it all depended on what was happening in France. I mean, during the time of Henry VIII in England, when the Reformation started, people in France thought, oh well, right, they accept them over there. Maybe we'll go because it's going to be easier than all this intolerance in our own country. So they began to come over, and then things might calm down a bit in France, so they were going back. Well, that's okay, you know, it's quiet down. But then when the Edict of Nantes was revoked by Louis XIV, just before then and around that period, people realised that the writing was on the wall. It was going to be safer and better to leave because they could then lead their lives freely. And so they came over, and up until about 1700, 1710 maybe, they were still coming over for that reason.
So what sort of things were happening in France that made them feel that they couldn't stay and be part, because they would have been French, you know, they're French citizens of the crown at the time. So what was the general feel of why they couldn't stay there? What was sort of happening?
There was a lot of punishment in everyday life. For example, if a Protestant person died, you couldn't just we'll organise a nice proper funeral, pay our respects properly. Huguenot funerals had to be at dawn or dusk.
Right.
No more than 10 people to attend.
Really?
And their cemeteries were always way out of town. Most inconvenient ways of doing it.
Yeah.
You couldn't go in the army, you couldn't go in the local, work for the local council, you know, in a proper position. You couldn't go in the legal profession. You could train, but then you wouldn't be accepted at the bar.
Right.
And Louis XIV was also encouraged to bring in a very special band of people known as the Dragoons, the King's Dragoons. And they would sweep down on villages, and their reputation preceded them. Whole villages would convert when they heard them coming.
Really?
The torture they put people through. And also people would then flee in fear, and the Dragoons would take the houses over, sell all the property, and no conscience, just pocket the money.
Sure. So there was quite a lot to leave from, you know. No wonder they felt they had to.
That's right.
Wow. How long did it take you to research this book? Because this is quite a substantial book. This is maybe 500 pages long. How long did it take you to create this?
It was 4 years. I was doing research, then I'd write a bit. I try and talk to people before I write a book as to what they are hoping to learn from this book and how they would like to learn the information. And it predominantly came across that people really wanted a full Huguenot book, not just little bits here and little bits there. And they wanted to know about the French side of it and the English side of it, and also all the other countries that Huguenots went to, because they did go far and wide, South Africa, Australia, America and so on. So I sat and thought about that, but also people were saying to me, there's a lot of academic books, but we would like a factual novel. So it's all true what's in there, and I've been privileged to be given unpublished family histories, which are obviously now published. But I've wrote it in such a way that you would be gently led through a story, rather than just being a whole series of dates. And
Sure. I think that does help for people to consume this and feel that they can relate to the information.
Exactly.
You do other talks. You do talks on this. Do you have any particular talks coming up soon? Is there more online of your previous talks? If people are really interested, other than purchasing the book, what's the easiest way to get that information?
Go to Facebook and look up the Story of the Huguenots. There's information on there about previous talks. I've spoken to the Society of Genealogists. I've spoken to local history groups. I'm talking to the WI in Greenford on Tuesday. I've been down to Wiltshire, Kent, all over the place. So please do look, and you'll find out other information. You'll also find some of the fascinating stories relating to them, where people have gone on and said, oh, I think I've got an ancestor. And I do try and reply to what people put on there.
That's brilliant of you. Do you have any other books in mind that you would like to produce in the future? And would they be historical ones? Would they be fiction?
Well, I've got two in mind. One of which is